That's music I would only use for the one and only Mr. Nick Waldner. Nick, hey, what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Oh man, that music was incredible. It's much different from my normal walkout music, but I gotta tell you, I felt like a prince just being celebrated.
Okay, so I got to know, like, and I'll go and do a proper introduction here in a moment. What is your typical walkout song? I got to know.
Whoa, man, there's so many. You can go through. If you watch the Super Bowl halftime show, you
Yes.
can pretty much pick anything in that genre.
Mary J.
That's my
Blige.
walkout.
Oh
Yeah.
Mostly Mary J. Blige. I figured as much. It's either that or Tupac, Picture Me Rolling. I figured it was one of
those. Oh, I love it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Kevin and Fred Show. As you can probably already sense, this week's guest is a longtime friend of mine, Mr. Nick Waldner, out of, I know it's not technically Baltimore, but can I say Baltimore? Is that okay?
Close enough. If you think of the state of Maryland, that's us. And for those of you who do not know geography, East Coast, dead center of the country, right close to DC.
Wow, that was very specific, Nick. I'm surprised.
I've been doing this a while. I've had to explain where that is more than once. Like if I would ask you, Kevin, what is the state north of Maryland and what's the state south of Maryland? How would you answer that?
I would say next question, please.
Okay, go ahead. You're running this show, not me.
I would say I want to phone a friend. Let me call my buddy Nick, and that's how I would do that. All right. All right, Nick, let's do this, man. So for the people that maybe don't know you yet, give us a quick rundown of your real estate business, kind of just high level overview, and then I want to kind of dive into a few things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been selling real estate since 2002. So just under 20 years. I'm coming up on maybe 2003. So 19 years, something like that. I spent the first bulk load of my career in the sales. You got to work, you got to run, you got to work 24 hours a day. It didn't matter what time it was. You were answering emails, answering phone calls. I made a lot of girlfriends mad that walked away from relationships because I don't want to be a part of that. And I did that for about 12 years before I started treating this like a business and started changing the way I looked at things. And all of a sudden I spend less hours in real estate and I make more money because I'm working smarter, not harder. And that's been the last 7 years. We're the #1 Keller Williams team in Maryland. And then I've branched out to flipping homes, buying rentals, multifamily, syndication, taking your vertical income and finding ways to make it horizontal.
I love that. That's obviously something you and I have talked about offline numerous times. Specific to the real estate team, give us an idea of, say, transactions last year, how many people on your team, just on the retail side. Let's start there, and then we'll kind of dive off into these other categories.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did just under 500 homes in 2021. We have today, it's a little bit into 2022. We have 19 agents right now. Of those 19, I'd say 6 or 7 are pretty brand new. They weren't really part of that production. So we're ramping up to have an even better year for 2022. And we're already, we're 2 months in and our numbers are crushing our numbers last year. And our numbers last year were our best numbers ever.
That's awesome, man. What do you attribute that to?
I think that the average person out there looking for a career, it used to be our fathers and mothers used to look for that long-term 30-year, find a place to live or a place to work. And now it's like, I want to work somewhere that challenges me, that helps me grow, not only professionally, but personally, that has some sort of cause or gives back or means something. I want to feel significance. And I think that we've created a great culture of that. And now we're attracting really, really high level talent that is just taking our business way beyond what I could have done.
Yeah, that's really profound when you think about that. Was there a moment in time for you, or like a decision point where you said, hey, we've got to get more purposeful about creating that type of environment or that culture?
Yeah, I think that, I think part of your culture is a reflection of you. So if you're a naturally outgoing person, you're going to have an outgoing team. That's why you see a lot of women run teams have a lot of women in it, or men run teams have a lot of men in it. We're attracted to our mirrored image. So you see that, but I think that's a mistake in terms of, you should be building a team that has both men and women, that have, baby boomers, Generation X's, millennials. You should be going the whole gambit. You should have people from every different race, color, creed, because what we're finding is the average home buyer could be from any one of those sectors. And you need people that are thinking, our group think is so much better when we have a baby boomer who's telling us their opinion, and then we have a millennial giving their opinion, and then we can shape all those into our final decision. So I think it's important to just to get out there and really break up your team into, what the world population looks like now.
Has that always been something you valued, like thinking about different viewpoints or perspectives other than what maybe your own is, or kind of like your own lane, if you will, or, hey, I grew up like in this certain way? You always valued outside opinions?
I can't say that I have. I think that's something that's evolved over time. And as you realize how important that is, and I think in the beginning, we just where we grew up and what we grew up in is kind of our bubble. And until you get out of that bubble, you don't really understand it. And I remember it was probably a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, I got a phone call and a woman said, hey, Nick, I just want to let you know I've selected your team to represent us in our transaction, and I want to tell you why. And I said, great. And she said, I saw a picture and you have a very diverse team, and that's the reason I chose you. And I don't know, right or wrong, my response was, I really appreciate you saying that, but I want to make sure you understand that I have a diverse team of talented people. No one was hired for any other reason than they're really talented at what they do. And we don't have any thoughts of prior knowledge of what that person looks like or comes from. And we found people from all walks of life, from all areas, that can be really talented in the real estate industry.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, you're sort of touching on an almost, not almost, definitely a sensitive subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think some people will go, yeah, well, I'm only surrounded by fill in the blank, right? Race or gender, and that's because that's all that's around me. But I think the reality is, if you say, hey, I'm going to purposely look for, here's my baseline, it's talent, right? You got to be a good person, you got to be really talented, learning based, all the things that I might value in a coworker or employee or salesperson or whatever. And then also go like, let's get that from a diverse base of people. I think you give yourself so much more opportunity as well as them.
Yeah. I mean, if you just look at right now in the real estate world, it's like 34% of first-time home buyers. That's the biggest population of people buying homes right now, is at 34%. And they're all millennials. So if 34% of your team isn't millennials, you need to go out and start hiring millennials so you can learn the way they think, the way what they're attracted to, the way you can market to them. I think it's crazy to think like, I'm going to know exactly how a millennial thinks. Like, I grew up and like, we got cell phones in college, super old. And these kids grew up at 2. They were flying through their parents' iPhone without even thinking. So we think differently, and we've got to put the right perspectives in our company so that we can help that broader group.
Yeah. It's so funny. I was just listening to another podcast this morning with, it was Tim Ferriss podcast, and he's interviewing a guy named Morgan Housel, who wrote an amazing book called Psychology of Money.
Profit First. Oh, Psychology of Money. Yep.
Amazing book, right? And Morgan was sharing some sort of stat around, they were talking about people that are on the board of directors for the world's largest companies, right? And the average age of these board members is something like in the mid 70s, which is great because you got people that have earned their way in. They've got this pedigree, they've got this track record of success. Hopefully that's why they became a board member. But when you see the makeup of a board, if that's all you have in your boardroom, and you're trying to figure out as a company, how do we go into the next decade, the next century? I'm not sure that's your target group that you want to be able to lead you that way.
No, somebody had put it like a really good way that I like the way they said this. They said, if you look at your at the population who buys your product, and we're not talking about real estate here, we're talking about anything. So if you have, it's 70% is women who buy this product, then your board should be at least 70% women to understand their perspective. We've all seen the movie What Women Want with what was that guy? Whatever it was. It was a great movie. I'm aging myself, but it was really good. And he gets struck by lightning, and all of a sudden he can hear what women are thinking. And now he changes his entire perspective about how to market to women, because he's starting to understand them. Yeah, Mel Gibson. But that's the same thing. Like, we should already be doing that. We should be putting people in a position to have direct impact on our company because of the people that we're going after. They're people that we're attracting.
Yeah, so true. All right, so let's switch gears for a little bit. Little known fact about Nick Waldner that I know. Former TV star, all-time hunk. Tell us about the TV show. And for those who don't know, Nick was it Waterfront Properties? Was that the correct name of it?
No, Waterfront House Hunting. It's on Hulu. If you haven't watched all 14 episodes, you get 22 hours. You got a weekend coming up. I just want you to binge straight on through if you don't mind. We're
just going to have to link to that in the show notes. So tell us about that show briefly, but then more importantly, I'd love to hear your story. Like, how did you get that opportunity? And then now looking back on it, would you do it again?
Yeah, great question. And I'll go the brief version, which is, I got a phone call like lots of agents get. Hey, we want to do this show. It's called My First Home. It's a different agent in every city, and it just changes every day or every episode. So I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And the key was, when they called me, they said, okay, we need a client, like pitch us one of your clients, because think about it, it's TV. They want a storyline. So I just thought in my head, like, all right, if I'm this person and I'm calling a bunch of agents and trying to find somebody who would be good on camera and fun to watch as an agent, and they have a client who would be fun to watch and entertaining, like, that's a pain in the butt to call these people. So I called her back and I said, look, I've got 9 clients for you. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. This is the third one. This is a single mom. And I just started naming all these different client types and said, what are you looking for? And the last one I happened to say was, and my girlfriend's thinking about buying a house, and she's really questioning whether she wants to mix business and pleasure and use me. And they were like, that one, we want that one. And I'm like, oh my God. So we shot the first episode. It went well. Probably, you shoot it. It's 4 or 5 days and you don't even think about it again. Like 9 months later, I get a phone call and it's like, hey, this is Joe out in LA. I'm a producer. Did you know you had the #1 My First Home in the country this year? And I was like, first of all, is this Kevin? Is this Fred? Who's calling me? Like, I thought it was a joke. So I hung up on him, and then he called me back and he's like, no, Google me right now. Go into IMDb. So we started talking, and then he started pitching me show ideas. And I didn't like any of them. I kept saying no, because he wanted to do let's talk about all your crazy clients and what the wacky stuff they do. And I'm like, no. He's like, let's talk about your team. They're all sleeping with each other. It's crazy. I'm like, no. And they're like, what about flipping homes? And at the time I wasn't flipping very many homes. So I was like, that's not me. And then they approached me with Waterfront House Hunting. And I was like, that sounds good. Now, the TV show is easy to say yes to, right? Who doesn't want to give it a shot and be on TV? But you find out really quickly that the glamour life that you think is a TV star is so far from it. 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And I mean, when I say 12-hour days, it was like 7 a.m., go. And then we would hustle. And then it'd be like 6:58, guys, come on. We only got 2 minutes to finish out this shot. We got to finish by 7 based on, and then we'd finish in 12 hours. And we would do that 6 days a week with 1 day off. And I can't tell you how many nights I was in a Holiday Inn Express, sitting at the bar, eating a dinner at 9 o'clock at night with whatever random bartender, while my friends and family and everybody I knew was nowhere near me.
That sounds like it sucks.
There was so I always want to give people both perspectives of that. Now, here's the other perspective. I went down to Key West to shoot an episode, and they have an aquarium there. And the guy was like, "Oh my God, you're Nick from Waterfront House Hunting. Do you want to get in the tank and feed the sharks?" Me? And they're like, "Yeah, you're the waterfront guy." Sure. So I climbed in the tank, wore a glove, fed these sharks. So I got to do some really cool stuff as well. But then at the end of the day, I'm sleeping alone in a Holiday Inn Express.
Yeah, that's rough. It's like that saying I heard, a lot of people want to be rich and famous, and should just try being rich first and see if that doesn't scratch the itch for you.
Exactly. Now, best thing that ever happened to me with that TV show is it allowed me to finally let go of my business. So like most of us, I had a hold of my business and I was like, "Here, you take it." And I had people on my team trying to take it and I would not let go. And then all of a sudden I was traveling 26 or 27 days out of 30. And I would like fly home on a Tuesday night, fly back out Thursday morning. So I'd be home like virtually none. I couldn't go on listing appointments. I couldn't work with buyers. I couldn't do any of that. I had to let go and let my team do what they've been trained to do.
Awesome. So what was that experience like for you, specifically for the team, of like having to give up control, if you will?
Yeah, super scary. And then you want them to be perfect in everything they do, and they're not going to be. It's just not going to happen. And then they screw things up, and you have to realize that every mistake is an opportunity for learning and not an opportunity to yell at them. Because, you got that two mentality. So we started something called Fail Forward Friday. Every Friday, everybody on the team had to say what they failed at this week, what they learned from it, and what they're going to do next week to improve or to not let that failure happen again. Or they could come and say, "This is my failure. And Kevin, I don't really know where to go with this. Help me."
I like that. So is that something you still do?
Yeah. If you go to failforwardfriday.com, inventor right here.
Wow.
I probably coined the phrase after reading it 9 times in 9 different books, but I invented that and the question mark. Those are my 2 claim to fame.
The question mark, huh, buddy?
Yeah. That was part of me. I did that.
That's just like the thing that floats above your head at all times. Like,
Exactly.
Okay. So looking back, there's obviously good and bad. If you had the opportunity to do it all over again, would you?
I would not do it if I was traveling like that again. Because I'm now married. I have 2 kids. We might be making a 3rd soon. Who knows? We'll see how that oven goes. But it was a lot of fun when I was single. In fact, I shot the first 14 episodes, got back from my trip, and I literally proposed to my girlfriend, probably 2 or 3 months later. Like, I knew she was the one. And so I proposed. And then about 2 months after I proposed, I got the call and they were like, "You got picked up for season 2 and season 3. We're going to shoot all 28 episodes. We're going to go do some international stuff as well. This is big. This is awesome." And I was like, "How long?" And they were like, "It's going to be about 10, maybe 11 months of shooting." And I had just gotten engaged, and my fiance, God love her, was like, "Go, it's what you've always wanted. Go do it. And I'll see you, I'll plan everything. I'll see you at the altar." And I really kind of had to wrestle with that and come to the decision of like, do I really care about being a reality TV show star? Or do I care about getting married, about having kids, about being the soccer coach, about being there for dinners and around for weekends? And so it wasn't a hard decision to say no to the next 2 seasons. And I got a lot of flack for it. A lot of flack.
I bet. I can only imagine. All right. So let's shift gears for a minute. You mentioned earlier, kind of in the intro, some of the other, I'll call it verticals, some of the other things that you're doing business-wise. Let's dive into a couple of those. Like, what was the first thing you did? Like, okay, the real estate sales team is going well. Was it flipping? What was it?
Yeah, good question. So what I realized, and I think I might have got this from the Psychology of Money, but I can't remember the term capitalpreneur. Have you heard that?
I have heard that. Yes.
I love it. It's so you have an entrepreneur, you go out and start a business and you are the fuel of that business. And then you have a capitalpreneur that your money goes out and earns more money. And your money is out there working 24 hours a day without you. So in our industry, we can make a lot of vertical money. There's a lot of money coming in. You sell a bunch of houses. Some of you are sitting around and your average sales price, 1.5 million. I'm about to throw up because we're at 300,000, but you're making a lot of money. But the second you stop selling real estate is the second you stop making money. So how do you take your vertical income and turn it into that capitalpreneur, or you make your money work for you? So for me, it was like, just if it cost me $50,000 to live and I made 100,000, then how do I get that 50,000 deployed into something? And that was kind of my first purchase, and it was buying a house. And this was back before they had the term house hacking. I bought a house. I put 2 of my buddies in the other bedrooms. Their rent pretty much paid the entire mortgage. And then eventually I moved out and replaced myself. So now my first purchase actually became a rental property. And then I bought another house, put 2 people in that, and didn't stay anywhere near as long. I was like 3 months, and I moved out of that and put a third person in, and that became my second rental property. So I started growing like that, but I just set a goal for myself. Can you buy one house every year? And if you do that over 20 years, that you're building a massive portfolio of homes. And now, now I'm at a point where I can buy 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 in a year, which is somewhere I never thought would be possible when I first started.
Yeah, it's crazy when you look at what you can accomplish. It seems so easy, like one a year. It almost feels like, I don't know, it's not even going to move the needle. I think that was my first reaction. My buddy Christian Peter first said that to me in like 2012. He's like, just buy one a year for 20 years. Just
yep.
And I was like, yeah, dude, I don't know. But the reality is all of a sudden you look up, if you actually can do that, you look up in even just 5 or 10 years and you go, oh my gosh, like there's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of net worth built up. And now you've got so much momentum. If you've done everything right, you can effectively do whatever you want from that point forward.
Yeah, exactly. Like that very first house I bought, I still own it to this day. I owe less than 100,000 on it. It's now worth 450, which blows your mind from what I paid for it way back then. And I'm getting $2,100 or $2,200 a month in rent. And my mortgage is like $800 or something crazy. So now I'm looking at that as like, that's more income. Now I'm making that $1,400 or $1,500 every month without even thinking, without having to wake up, without having to sell another piece of real estate. What if I had 5 of those? What if I had 10? What if I had 20?
Yeah, that's pretty solid. Okay. So buying houses was kind of like the first progression.
Yeah.
What happened after that? Or what was the next thing that you added?
Well, buying houses is fun, but you also have to manage them, and that's not as much fun. Yeah. So then I started looking at syndications, and syndications is basically there's somebody who finds a deal. So let's call it a 250 unit complex in El Paso, Texas, and it's 3.4 million. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't have 3.4 million to buy this. I didn't have 25%. I didn't pay that. So you bring together 10 or 15 partners and everybody puts money in. There's one person who's a general partner. They run it, but it's 100% hands off for me. I put my money in. It grows as they improve the property, as they rent it for more, the cash flows improve. And then 5 years later, we usually sell it and then we move on to the next one. But my money leaves my wallet, is gone for 5 years, but I am getting residuals from it. And then it comes back bigger than I left it. And then I can do it again and again and again. And syndications is a great way to get into commercial where you don't have to have all the expertise. Your job is just to vet and choose the best syndicators, because that's the big key.
All right. So I think the obvious question for most of our listeners then is, okay, Nick, that sounds great, but how did you find that first syndication deal? Like, how do you get those opportunities? I think I know the answer, but I would love to hear what your
yeah. I think it's not any different than, if I'm assuming most of the audience sells real estate in this group, right? Yeah. So where do you find most of your clients? Everyone's going to say the same thing: sphere of influence. It's the people I know, the people I'm connected to. It's the same thing here. So if you find out of your entire sphere, there's 4 or 5 people that are buying syndications and understand that type of investing, those are the people you gravitate to. And what I found is, like, now I've gotten to the point where I had somebody approach me with a syndication deal. The numbers look fantastic. And they sent me all the paperwork, and I don't know how to read all that. It's 50 pages of nonsense. It's like they write it so you can't read it. So I took it to one of my advisors and I said, hey, I'm looking at this one. What do you think? And he was like, there's a 5% acquisition fee in here. It's a 50-50, not a 70-30. There isn't any preferred return. Yeah, all their numbers look good, but they're estimating that they're going to turn this 5 cap into an 8 cap. And that's pretty hard. Like, all of a sudden, like, my eyes, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. So I'm not going to do that one. But in reality, I just had somebody explain all the reasons why I needed to say no. And then every prospectus I got after that, I was like, all right, what's the preferred return? Okay, what's the equity split? Okay, and I started digging into a lot more just because I started to understand it.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing from you is your sphere of influence matters. And I think I get the question a lot, like, why don't I want to go to this event or that event? There's just a bunch of other realtors there. I'm like, yeah, so you can learn from them and find out what other people are doing, right? I want to know, like, what is Nick investing in this month, and is it possible? Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do I go learn, or how do I start to be able to look at deals? For me, that's super valuable. And what I'm hearing from you is that that's literally where it comes from too. Is just by surrounding yourself with those people.
And you and I talked when we had breakfast one morning in Vegas after one of our speaking things. We were talking about crypto. Yeah. And neither one of us are crypto geniuses. Neither one of us are like, oh yeah, I got it all figured out. But I knew I wanted to get into the space. So I did exactly what you said. I started reading out to figure out, who do I know that's connected in crypto? And I ended up going on a trip with 15 guys. And of the 15 guys, 2 of them run the biggest Bitcoin conference in the world. It's being held in Miami. Diplo's playing. I mean, it's like this 30,000 person Bitcoin conference. And these are the guys that own that and have been running that for 5 or 6 years. So I got a chance to spend time with them. I didn't know them prior to the trip. It was all entrepreneurs coming together that didn't know each other. So I got to know them. They set me up with like this 21 days of Bitcoin, which is just an email every day that explains it a little bit more. And if you guys, I think if you look at the hashtag 21 days of Bitcoin, you can pull that up. But it was like eye-opening, where I was like, oh, now I'm starting to understand it. Now I'm starting to get it. And for the longest time, I just kept telling myself, nah, that's not for me. That's not for me. And I've got a lot of friends that are now like millions of dollars in that world, and that's all they do. And I think it's crazy. As I learn more and more, it's not as crazy as I thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think just the fact that you put yourself in a position to be around people and to learn and to be open and go, okay, I might think one thing, but let me get a different perspective. I mean, dude, it goes back to your business. Let me get a different perspective other than this tunnel view I have in my life. And yeah, you reach outside of that. I think that's a super valuable lesson for people to hear.
For Kevin, you probably don't know this story, but when I first got to KW and I joined, and I was just a know-nothing agent that didn't have any production to get any awards or any of that stuff. I remember finding out that Gary had his top 100 meeting where he met with all the top 100 for like 3 hours, and they poured into all different subjects. So I fought my way to where it was located. And then as Gary was walking up, I ran up next to him and I said, hi, Gary, I'm Nick. You don't know me at all. I've never been here. I just started at KW. I really love your company. I really love everything I read in the book. If you could just let me in here, I'll sit in the back. I won't say a word. I'll just be a fly on the wall. I just want to listen. And he said, come on in. And I was like, oh, okay. So I rushed in, sat in the back, and I started writing, started taking notes. And you guys were talking about things that I didn't understand at all. I'm writing. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. So then I stopped. I was like, wait a minute. I'm just going to write down their names. And I'm like, Kevin Kaufman, short sales. Got it. And I started writing down names, and then I friend requested all those people. And then I started a relationship, and that's how we started being friends. Is I reached out and I was like, man, what are you doing? What one, why don't you wear shoes? And then two, like, tell me about your business. And I started learning from the things you were doing. It helped me grow mine. And I did it again and again and again and again. It's the same reason why if anyone calls me, I'm always willing to share anything because I stole it all from somebody anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there's always nothing new under the sun, nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Exactly.
All right, dude, as we start to wind down, let me ask you this. As you mentioned, we're recording this. It's first week in March, 2022. What are you most excited about this year?
Good question. This is going to be a different answer. I think my most excitement this year is in letting go more and more and more. So I've hired a director of growth. He does all our recruiting, all our interviews. I come in at the end when he feels like he found talent, so I can, vet them and make the final decision. I've got a director of operations, and they are running everything on the operations side. And we're having conversations a couple of times a week to check in, but it's not me doing it. I brought in an amazing new assistant who just started. He graduated and like literally 2 days later started with me. And he's just been on my hip. He's right there for like the last 2 months now. And it has been like phenomenal watching him grow. And he's been in every coaching conversation. He's just been with me over and over and over and over again, so we can understand, how my brain works and what I think. And I think Brett Tanner did a really good job. His guy's been with him for like 9 years, came right out of college. So just like we talked about seeking those other people, I found Brett and his guy. They've been together 9 years now, right out of college is where he found him. And I peppered them with questions about how I could help our relationship with my assistant, and we could work together and we could grow together, and how he could succeed and what were the benefits and like all that stuff, so that I can learn from somebody who's already doing it. So I think to me, like letting go of business stuff and putting the right people in place and watching them do it better than I did it before, it's humbling and it's awesome.
Yeah. It's also, I think it's the scariest thing. Probably, so many of us are just have a high need of control that we can never afford to let go so we don't get to the point where you're at now, which is cool. What else can I let go of? So that way I can, who else can I bring into my world? The more I give up, the more people I can bring into my world, and more I can go focus on other things too.
Yeah. And I learned this somewhere. I can't remember where, but a guy came in, he wrote on a board and he wrote control. And then he wrote controls with an S. And he said, does anybody know the difference? And we're all looking at each other. It's a pretty simple answer. One has an S. And he says, one, control is what you guys all want. You don't want to let go of anything. You always want to be the one to do everything. You want to make sure it's done right. So you want control over it. But you're also the bottleneck to every part of your growth if you're the only person who can make decisions. So what you need to do is set up controls. I'm not telling you to give your business to somebody else. I'm saying give your business and say, these are the parameters. I need to see this. I need to see these numbers. I need to see this. You need to always follow this model. Whenever this happens, this is what, and like all of a sudden, when you start putting controls in place, when something happens, they follow your controls. So they're basically doing it the way you want them to. It allows you to let go.
Yeah, that's so good. All right, man. I think that's a good one. That's a good story / lesson to end on. Anybody who wants to reach out to you or kind of learn more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, social.
Besides,
what was the last part?
I said,
oh yeah. Besides Hulu, and if you do go on Hulu, I expect you to put a review in, 5 stars only. But you can find me on Instagram or Facebook, both Nick Waldner. You can email me. You can look up nickwaldner.com or waldnerwintersteam.com or failforwardfriday.com. It's got all my contact information. I'm always open to helping people. And I say this every time because 99% of you will never reach out. So it's not that big of a deal for me to say it, but 1 or 2 of you will. And that's the person who's going to go the furthest because they're willing to put themselves out there and willing to ask.
Totally agree, man. Totally agree with that. All right,
Yeah.
Nick, that was fun. Anything else that did I miss anything?
I guess the last thing that I didn't talk about is, the ancillary businesses or the verticals that we're growing. When you're letting go of control of the real estate world, what are you doing to build other ancillary businesses that fit right in line with that? So that's been really exciting to me. And I'm looking at mortgage, insurance, title, and how to build those so that they're connected to my business. So if we do 500 units, we also do 500 here, 500 here, and 500 here. All of a sudden, I can work the exact same and make more money. And I love that idea. So mortgage is the one that I'm really keyed in on. So if anybody's in that world and you're starting that process or you feel like you have it figured out, please reach out to me, because that's what I'm growing right now. And I love it.
Remind me offline. I'll make a connection for you.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to Kevin and Fred show with Nick. Go give him check out his website and stalk him on social. In fact, just feel free to
Wait, can I ask where Fred is? It's always the Kevin and Fred show. I never see Fred.
Never heard of her.
Love it. Thanks for having me, man.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again soon.